spectacle and wondering what the hell's going on. In the studio now is the editor of Wolves of Westminster, Patrick Timms. Hello, Patrick.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in. Just briefly, that's not why I asked you in, but your thoughts on Nicola Sturgeon's arrest?
Well, I think it's one of those where, just as you were saying earlier, obviously it's been her husband, it's been their chief treasurer. The other two were arrested and released without charge, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah,
so,
they were.
You know,
they were.
And so we don't know what's going to happen with Nicola here. Quite possibly that the same is going to happen. Now, of course, it's very difficult when you look at these kinds of things, because you think, well, look, on the one hand, you want to say, well, no smoke without a fire. You know, why are all these people being arrested? On the other hand, if they are arrested and released without charge, if she's arrested and released without charge, maybe there is some smoke without a fire.
Yeah,
who knows?
It's just possible. But we await developments with interest. This could... Don't forget, it's an investigation. The investigation could conclude there's nothing to investigate. There's no wrongdoing.
And we've seen that before so many times.
Indeed, but certainly dramatic events up there. And just, again, on an overarching basis, before we get to the topic we were going to discuss, your thoughts about the ongoing Boris psychodrama. How much trouble is Rishi in because, Boris has stormed out. He's now urinating outside the tent. He's already lobbing political hand grenades at Rishi, saying he's not a proper Conservative Prime Minister. How much of a problem does this present to Mr Sunak?
Well, OK, so the short answer to that is we're going to find out, aren't we? Because no, and I don't mean to deflect the question. I'm just saying, no, obviously Nadine went first. Yeah. Then it was Boris. Then it was Nigel Adams, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, Nigel Adams, yeah.
And they're all Boris allies.
Yes.
So there's been speculation in Westminster circles, the kind of people I'm talking to, that, maybe actually, yes, they are trying to precipitate by-elections that the Conservatives are likely to lose, and therefore this is going to cause a problem for Rishi. Now, that my main comment on where we are thus far, because, of course, we're only a couple of days after this, that Boris's letter that he wrote, his thing that he put out,
1,000 plus words.
It's I'll tell you what I think it is, and I'm not passing judgment per se. I'm just saying I think this has been written definitely from a place of anger.
I was saying this yesterday. The thing about Boris Johnson is he has this swashbuckling image, a cavalier image, but actually politically he's always been quite careful, quite cautious,
but he's not
quite
being
calculated. Now. Yes, when he resigned, he was clearly in a fury. In a rage, wasn't he?
And so with all of this, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. All we do know is that we now have 3 by-elections coming up. I don't think a timetable has been announced for them yet. Do you know?
No, they haven't yet.
No, I didn't think they had been. I wonder whether it's going to be the kind of thing where they hold them at roughly the same time or the same day, or whether they're actually staggered. And we just don't know about this, and we don't know whether or not there's going to be any more future resignations. What we do know is that a lot of people are going to see it as a litmus test for Rishi Sunak, just as you say.
And do you think, there's more to this situation than meets the eye. It didn't just happen.
Oh, of course not.
And obviously Boris suspects that Mr Sunak has been operating behind the scenes to basically doing him in, to finish him off. So there's this psychodrama going on behind the scenes. Now, I would maintain that Mr Sunak has made a mistake making such a big enemy of Boris Johnson. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I think all of the People's Vote crowd would have to might have the same opinion as well about making an enemy of Boris Johnson and people like Dominic Cummings. Not that he's involved anymore, but I'll tell you what I find interesting is that actually, so how did Boris got rid of? Lots of people resigned, one after the other after the other. So now he and his allies appear to be doing something fairly similar. I mean, it's not quite in the same numbers, but you almost wonder whether, yes, this is the kind of, as you say, psychodrama pushback, which is sort of, taste of your own medicine sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation, and we certainly haven't heard the last of old Boris. No. Now, let's get to the topic that I asked you in to talk about. I want to talk about Ed Miliband, what I call Labour's Ed Miliband problem. Ed Miliband is the man, of course, who lost that election against David Cameron, condemning the Labour Party to a long period opposition, which continues to this day. He also brought in the new leadership voting system that saddled the Labour Party with the disastrous Jeremy Corbyn. So thanks very much for that, Ed. Now he's shadow climate change secretary.
Yes.
And he has apparently persuaded, Keir Starmer announced this last week, that he's going to scrap all North Sea oil and gas. And this apparently was Ed persuading him that this is the correct green thing to do. Now, backbenchers in the Labour Party, some of whom do exist on planet Earth, are saying this is a disaster. Right. This is not real world politics.
Okay.
So what? Why does the Labour Party and why does Keir Starmer continue to indulge Ed Miliband? Because he barely ever puts a foot right about anything, does he? He is a serial bungler.
Well, OK, so, I mean, Labour just wants to get into power at the moment.
Yeah.
And so they will say...
much I agree.
They will say certain things to appeal to certain cohorts of voters.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you a question, Kevin. How's your physics?
Not very good.
Excuse me, not so much mine.
I'll tell you a story about physics. When I was at school, it was a long time ago, my school report for physics, the physics class, I always remember it, my mother's showing it to me, said trying to get work out... no, that's right, I got F for the exam mark and F for effort, and the teacher said... a budding physicist in our midst. So my physics is terrible, thanks very much.
So mine is not so great either, but I do remember the principle that nature abhors a vacuum, right?
Right.
And around Sir Keir Starmer, not much happens in way of policy ideas.
Right.
Now, it's also true that Ed Miliband, well, he is the shadow environment secretary or climate change secretary, whatever it is he's supposed to be. So, you know, this is his area of responsibility. And because nature abhors a vacuum, it will be filled, right? Yeah. Now, the way that the Mail reported this story was that Sir Keir was said to be in thrall to Ed Miliband as a former leader, because it was said that Miliband was instrumental in getting him selected for a seat. Right? Okay. Now, that's not the way I view it, because this is all just part of the playbook, and it might just be a ruse to let someone else have to own this. Now, if Sir Keir...
Yeah, interesting.
OK, right, so if Sir Keir doesn't think this is a particularly good idea, and this is what happens in politics all the time, you know, is he willing to let someone else be the fall guy? And then, you know, if there's a policy that's controversial, what you do tend to do, let's say he becomes Prime Minister, is you let one of your ministers front it, and then if they mess it up, you sack them, and then you're still in the clear. This is the kind of thing that happens. It doesn't mean he's in thrall at all. Now, what we do know is that there's significant opposition from, as you said, the Labour backbenchers, also from the trade unions. Well, I think what that means is that he doesn't really need to worry about what he doesn't think he needs to worry about what the trade unions think right now. There was a quote from a Labour backbencher, and your producer has told me I'm allowed to use this word only once, and as a quote, that it is middle-class bollocks, OK? So
I like that quote.
Well, you know, so that was the quote. Can't believe I just got away with that.
But it is, you know... I'm not going to use that phrase, but scrapping North Sea oil and gas entirely is a kind of economic suicide, isn't it? I mean, this is a kind of madness.
It is, and the trade unions have been opposing this as well, of course, haven't they? Because they could be up to 70,000 jobs, maybe 100,000 jobs that could go to this. Now, people might go to posh dinner parties and opine about how much they love the environment, but at the end of the day, they still need a job, and that's, you know, and even beyond that, you know, the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, he has said that he's felt very frustrated about the way this policy has been put through. I think he feels blindsided. So does Labour Central Office, does Southside not think it needs to worry about Scottish Labour? It doesn't think it needs to worry about the trade unions? Doesn't, you know, this is not very... I mean, in a way, though, it's classic Labour, because they were going to put out this £28 billion plan, weren't they, every year for shoring things up with green jobs. Now, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has ridden back on that only this week. So you think, well, this is classic Labour. It's like what they did with abolishing the grammar schools in 1965. They haven't got anything to replace it with, you know?
Yeah, it's... I mean, they're green. It's absolutism. That's what their green declaration is, and you know, absolutism doesn't work in the real world. That's the problem with this, and I think Ed Miliband is just one of these politicians who just exists in cloud cuckoo land, loves to virtue signal, say, come on, let's save the planet, let's make everything wonderful. Well, life isn't like that, and the real world inhabitants in the Labour Party are saying, wait a minute, you're going to lose us loads of votes with this.
Well, do you reckon then that Sir Keir Starmer is just letting him do that?
Could be, yeah.
You know?
But what was it? Not me, Gov. It was Ed Miliband. So Ed Miliband might not be a problem. He's there for a particular reason.
Can be the case.
Interesting. Tell us a bit before you go, Tim, about Wolves of Westminster. You've got it on your shirt.
Yes. Yeah. So we are a political news, comment and analysis platform. We tend to publish a few times a week because we're all volunteers. But one of the main things we do is we train people up and we give them a repository, as it were, a portfolio. And there are people who've written for us who've now, you know, one of them's at the Sun, one of them's at the Express.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one of them comes on here every so often. You know, there's that's the kind of thing that we do. We've also done some significant expose work, and you can see that on our exclusive section. We are, as I say, quite small, quite a voluntary platform, but we've done some big stuff.
So if I put in Wolves of Westminster in Google, your platform will come up.
It will, and I'm also going to give you my card when we're done. So there we go.
Okay, so Wolves of Westminster, everyone, look it up. I haven't seen it myself, but I'll have a look myself later on. Sounds like an excellent publication. And thank you very much to the editor of the Wolves of Westminster, Patrick Timms, for coming into the studio. Thanks, Patrick. When we come back, the battle to become the next chair of the BBC, as in chairperson. I'm going to start referring to people as bits of furniture. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yes, so the battle to become the next chairperson of the BBC. It's getting nasty. Find out all about it after the break. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. This is Talk TV, live from the Talk Radio studios.